Hi everyone, it's me, Amy Holden. I am so excited to be hanging out with you today. I know we've been going through the Sermon on the Mount, but Parker let me know it would be okay if I hijack today and give you guys a little bit of an update. So after 5 years of serving with you guys, I'm actually going to be stepping down from my role as Family Life Director. I know it's probably a little bit out of left field for some of you guys, but with COVID, like many of you, my husband and I have just had to take some time and kind of reevaluate what our priorities are and why we do certain things and all of that kind of stuff that has just come with COVID. So Jonathan and I have decided that it's best in this season for me to take a step down, for me to be a stay-at-home mom with my 3 kids and be able to just really pour into them and turn all of my focus on them. But with that also means we are going to be moving out of this state, most likely Phoenix, but we aren't 100% sure on that quite yet. I have committed to being at Missionary through November and will most likely be in the Ventura area through December. So I really hope that I get to see you guys before we leave and say bye and give you guys a air hug, like a COVID friendly air hug. Because student ministries has been my life for the last 5 years, and if I'm honest, I don't really want to step down, but I know that that is what God is calling me to do, and I don't know any other place that's better to be than inside in the middle of God's will. So that's just a step that we're taking in faith as a family. And as I stare down this huge life change that's about to happen, I look forward and I just think of what all the little decisions I'm going to have to make and all the different things that are going to alter, and it's scary for me. And as I look back at 2020, the life that it's been, it's just been such a surreal experience this year. And I know that it's been that way for everyone. People are talking about if they're going to go back to school, when they're going back to school, and just all that comes with 2020. And it kind of made me think a little bit about what in 60 years, when kids and students your age are learning about this time, what are you going to say you did during COVID? What are you going to tell your grandchildren happened during COVID? What are you going to tell your grandchildren what you learned during COVID? Because this is, that people are going to be sitting in schools learning about this global pandemic. So that question of what am I going to tell my grandchildren about COVID just really, really stuck with me. And I began to think about that and kind of want to process with you guys what that's going to look like. So what are you going to tell your grandchildren you did during this season? Are you going to tell them that you binged watched like 30 Netflix shows? Are you going to tell them that you learned a bunch of random TikTok dances? Or are you going to be able to tell them that this is a time that you use to grow closer to Jesus? Because I know which one I would want to tell my grandchildren, but in reality, it's really hard in this day-to-day to do that. So I want to encourage you guys to think about that question. I want you guys to process it with our small group. And so before we turn to our small groups, I'm going to ask you guys 3 questions and kind of process it with you a little bit. And then you guys will talk about it in your small groups. And the first question that I want you guys to begin to process is, how have you seen God at work in your life during COVID? Like, how have you seen him working through your family, through your relationships? How have you seen God grow you? How have you seen him at work in your life? I've had conversations with some of you, and I know that this has been a really sweet season for you in some ways. You guys have gotten closer with your family. Some of you guys have had deepening friendships because the amount of people you're seeing is limited. So some of those friendships have just really been deep and meaningful for you. So I want you guys to take some time and talk about that. Talk about how you've seen God at work during this weird season that is COVID 2020. And the second question that I want you guys to process through is, what is one area of your life that you've grown in during COVID, and one area of your life that you've identified you're not quite as far along as you thought you were going to be. I know for me, one thing that I was kind of surprised about during this season was that I was okay with the slower pace. If you guys know me, if you know my family, you know that we run 1,000,000 miles a minute. We have 3 kids. We're always doing something. We're always at the church or going to a friend's house or family or whatever. But that got stripped away during COVID, and I was surprised at like my ability to be okay with that. But one thing that I would have told you before COVID, like, no, I'm a pretty patient person. Like, I have 3 kids. I work with middle schoolers. I work with high schoolers. Like, I'm patient. But I have realized during COVID that I am not. For example, having to wait in line to go into a grocery store to me is absolutely ridiculous, and I hate it. And I realized that I had this underlying sense of my time being more important than someone else's because I needed to go to the grocery store so they could wait. Like, it was just kind of something not very pleasant about myself that I realized during this season. So I want you guys to take some time and think about that. What's an area that you kind of were like, like I did pretty good in that area of your life? And then what's another area, something that you recognized in yourself that you're kind of like, oh dear, yeah, that needs to change. So that's the second question. And then the third area that I want you guys to kind of process together and talk about is, are there any areas in your life that you need to submit to God? Are there any areas that you need to turn over to Him? And I know that's kind of a churchy language, like, okay, we need to submit this to God. Like, that tends to be a little churchy. So I want to talk about what that actually means. So let's break it down a little bit. So maybe for the last 6 months, you just feel super overwhelmed with the fact you have no idea what the future is going to look like. You have no idea when you're going back to school. You don't know when you're going to be able to see your grandparents again. You don't know when you're going to be able to have like a normal birthday party again. Like, all of those things are just so overwhelming to you. So in response to that, you plan. Like, if you're like me, you're a planner. So you plan down to the detail of what should happen. And then you go through, and it doesn't happen, of course, because it's COVID. And then you get super frustrated. So what do you do again? You go back and you plan. And then you get super frustrated when it doesn't work. And then it's kind of this like cycle. And then eventually you're like, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. Let's binge watch Netflix and scroll through on TikTok until I numb my mind. Like, that would be an example of not submitting to God. And I would like to present to you that instead of that plan and then get frustrated processes, you plan, because plans are good. God gave us the ability to plan, but hold those plans with an open hand. Hold those plans in a way that allow for the change, and in a way that helps you know that you're not ultimately responsible if those plans happen, that God is ultimately responsible if those plans happen. And now, I don't know if that's your exact situation, but just an example of what it kind of looks like to submit things to God. And in my own life, for me, honestly, it was this job. At the beginning of COVID, Jonathan and I looked, and we kind of saw 2 options before us, me continuing to do this and absolutely love it, and the other option of staying home with my children and absolutely loving it as well. So we had to submit both those options to God with open hands so that we could then release the one that God was calling us not to do, and then submit to the one that God was calling us to do. And if I'm completely honest, it scares me. My personality is overachieving, and to me, a job is easier than the unknown of moving and all the things. So that's kind of how that submission has played out in my life, and it's amazing. And I don't know any other place that I'd rather be than in the center of God's will. But that doesn't mean it's not scary. It doesn't mean I don't have questions. It doesn't mean that I am just like willfully going along like with my eyes closed and singing. It's scary. But I know ultimately God has an amazing plan for my life that's going to lead to the flourishing of my family. So I'm choosing in this moment to follow it. And I hope that's encouraging to you guys. I know sometimes you don't necessarily feel like you can relate to what's going on, especially with COVID and everything. But just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a glimpse and an update, and just let you know that Parker is going to do an amazing job getting to continue to lead you. And I am so excited for what is going to happen in the next couple years. And I hope I get to see you all before I leave. And we have started our in-person services. We have them at 8, 9:30, and 11:30. Would love to see you on a Sunday. And you do need to RSVP for those. So go ahead and go to venturamissionary.com and sign up to attend one of those services. And I hope I get to see you guys soon. Bye.